Good morning, the time being 9 a.m. on Wednesday, February 26th. I'd like to call the Kane County Finance and Budget Committee agenda meeting to order. First order of business, please do the roll call.
Juby,
Judy here, remote.
Lewis, Sanchez,
Sanchez present.
Surges,
Present.
Tepe,
Tuppy here.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
Berman.
Berman's here.
And Mr. Berman, are you going to be participating in today's meeting?
Well, I'll try to,
Okay. And Ruff.
This here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Moving on, I need a motion, a second, or unanimous consent on the approval of the minutes for January 29th, 2025.
I think we need to approve the online attendees.
Oh, yes, excuse me. We'll need to approve both Ms. Juby and Mr. Berman for online attendance. Any objections? Seeing none, they're both welcome to join in the meeting. Moving on now to the approval of the minutes for January 29th, 2025. I need a motion and a second or a unanimous consent.
Lewis moves for unanimous consent to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Any objections, concerns? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Under public comment, I believe we only have one person on, Michelle Betag.
Good morning, Michelle Betag, St. Charles. I just want to say, I feel like this retail tax referendum that's on the April 1st ballot is basically the Safety Act Part 2 bait and switch. When I came to the January meeting and the slides were presented, the information was basically about the county has elected to use the tax to be used exclusively for public safety, crime prevention, detention, firefighting, police, medical, ambulance, and other emergency services. I've gone to almost all of the presentations, and I believe as of Monday, the narrative has completely changed. And, I do see there are, buildings on some of this stuff, but, when the voter goes into the booth or by mail, fortunately, they will see on the ballot, this is to pay the public safety purposes. Shall Kane County be authorized to impose an increase on its share of local sales tax by 0.75%. This would mean consumer would pay an additional 75 cents on a sales tax for every $100 of tangible personal property. It's a safety act all over again. The wording is everything, right? So you didn't say we're going to raise another $51 million, which is fine. It's marketing, genius. However, now I'm going to presentations and Madam Chair is talking about we don't have any lactation rooms in our building. I mean, I had 5 children. I probably nursed for 60 months, which is amazing. I never went into a lactation room. But anyway, leaky pipes, everything else that's being, presented on the screen now. The voter won't know anything about that. However, we just received $105 million from COVID funds. We used about $20 million to do our repairs. I don't know. I think if I inherited a great deal of money, I would have been putting it toward my repairs that I've been putting off since when Roger started 2003. Now it seems like everything's falling apart. And to your point, Mrs. Strathman, yesterday, commercial property is tanking. I'm not sure if you guys realize that, but I mean, our properties, yes, there are investments and we need to keep them up. But the commercial property is tanking. We do have a large amount of assets in those 27 properties. Perhaps we might, I don't know, want to sell. I know it's not a good time. However, if our portfolio is so large and the demands of those expenses are so large, maybe we'd want to consider a lot of this is prime retail commercial space. I do feel like this is being bait and switched to the voter, which I know that's kind of the idea. Federal programs, as we see, and now we're doing a deep dive in some of these expenses. Some of these federal programs we see start with grant money and they continue to go on and on and on. And one more thing, and then I'll be done. I just want to bring up the illegal alien that murdered these two Geneva residents. The court case is, this week, we see nothing in the newspapers. There's no mention of any of this. This is just one of the crimes being committed in Kane County. And, I feel so bad for these families. I just hope that we can get some either public notice from this or, empathy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spitag. Seeing no other public comment, we have the treasurer's report. Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This morning, in place of my normal report, I'd like to make a presentation. It's going to be between 12 and 14 minutes, and I'd like to ask Blair if he can go ahead. The first piece is about 55 seconds of just a video kind of framework.
Oh. Too bad.
Good job. Good job.
Okay, so thank you very much, Blair. If you'll put up the first slide at your convenience. So basically 3 points: need to know where you're going. Don't act crazy. Good. Okay. And then the final one is unfortunately, sometimes it's necessary in order to avoid distractions to kind of not back down from the antagonism. So the next slide. It's true, the 80-20 rule. Typically, 80% of the good work is done by 20% of the people. Actually, that rule, not so much in our office, in the treasurer's office, because the can the echo of the can that be adjusted?
It's from the Alice in Wonderland clip, I think. It's affecting the system.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy. The Mad Hatter. Okay. Okay. So in the first instance, the 80% of good work done by 20% of the people, there is a bipartisan group of a great majority of the board members trying to do good work for the taxpayers. I hope I don't embarrass anybody by mentioning names, but Jared Sanchez, with how you treat people when they come to your meetings, the public comes to speak. They are our employers. Bill Leonard, your desire for just plain old fashioned honest competence. Leslie Juby and Myrna Molina do their homework, and they insist that we all meet objective standards. I remember the first time that I disagreed as chairman with Myrna Molina, and I went through the experience that she had done her homework better than I had done my homework. I didn't make that mistake a second time. Cliff and John Gripe, Deb Allen, not voting for a budget that she wasn't convinced was in the best interest of her constituents. Monica Silva, person who's so pleasant to work with. So we have so many people who are working so hard for our constituents. But then it's also true, the reverse side of it is, 80% of distraction caused by 20% antagonists. That's just 5 out of 25 people, 20%. And I asked myself, well, what is it that's really going on here? And I looked up what is picking at a scab. And it's literally, there's a term for it, pathological excoriation repeatedly and uncontrollably, picking at your own skin at scab that never existed, sometimes resulting in injury. So there's 4 main pieces that I'm going to cover in the next 10 minutes based on gossip, the completed audit, who does what here, and then you have what you need. And so it's stop the distraction. Really, the current leadership has been in place now. It's in the 5th year. Many of us are hearing, well, it's because of the past administration. When you've been anywhere for 4 or 5 years in the leadership position, you ought to take responsibility for what's happening. So next slide. So the first is just a deliberate lie. It dates back to some of my first meetings here. It's cheap political posturing. The truth of the transfer of assets from the brokerage companies, Truist, Raymond James, Stifel to US Bank, every penny of the county assets is successfully transferred. It was between April and June of 2023. Here's the list of all the instruments. This would be considered like the production function, maybe even the first derivative in a spreadsheet of all the investments that were transferred. Now, the problem is that it didn't go fast enough for some of the critics. And I would ask you, who knows more about properly transferring assets? You know, our colleague Vern Tepe, Kathy Hopkinson, Corinne Parag, Mavis Bates, even the new accounting firm, Lauterbach Amann, or the experts like the 5th largest bank, custodial bank in the United States and US Bank, Vectors Research, which is one of the top 10 in the country as far as fixed income, and PFMAM, who were selected through RFP. So what we also accomplished there was suitability standard was the old standard that they could sell us anything that we were not smart enough to not buy. And we exchanged that for a fiduciary standard. What was interesting about that process, by the way, for the people who say, well, that should have been done so quickly, is that Truist closed down its entire business in this area the next month after we started this process. So thank goodness that we had started in April. The majority of the assets were already moved by the time they closed. Next slide. This is just the tie out. The numbers in the bottom left and the bottom right of the $211 million, $683,000. This was done by experts paying attention, tied out to the penny. Next slide. And what you get are good results. If frankly, if we all work together, if you'll support our work, you get 2 years of really good results. $3 million of property, $3 billion of property tax collected, $38 million of interest income earned, best in class operating bank changeover, and then competent staff strengthened. In our office, the reason things get done, in my opinion, so well is that Maria, Cindy, and Carlos take care of the collection process and then the customer service, and along with their teams. We've now added Jeannie in replacement of, I had to replace a person. The first time I made that change, right on the first go round, and I had to go at it again, this time with testing. And we've hit a grand slam home run in Jeannie. So now here, when you make mistakes, I would just ask you to consider correcting them. Next slide. In absolute dollars, you're way ahead. Next slide. Relative measures, you're way ahead. Next slide. The question that you're going to be asked, and you're already being asked, is with the windfall of all this additional interest income, where is it? What did you do with it? I know the answer is, well, it's been spread out to 250 funds and those people are managing it. I say, what are they doing with it? So it is and that's just going to compound. That question is going to compound. Going to need to do something about that, in my opinion. Next slide. This year end, going back 2 years to try to reopen an audit makes no sense to me. Joe Biden would say, you know, it's come on, man. $81,000 more in the bank than the books. I wasn't consulted. I heard about this in the parking lot out here one morning. I'm coming in. Kathy Hopkinson tells me about it. Said, which way did the transaction go? It's in our favor. More money in the bank than in the books. Said, fine if the auditors are fine. The audit was closed and signed off on the financial officer, on the chairman, by the outside auditor, and the entire board. That means that the books are closed. That also means the final point about starting the fiscal year 11/30/24 from zero, plus or minus the outstanding checks and deposits in transit. Now, you know, according to the procedures, $210,000 in December of 24 was put into an emergency resolution, numbers up there. And now I believe that that money is being misappropriated. Next slide. Where in the RFP, the scope of service was basically, hey, help us do journal entries and bank reconciliations. But instead, what's happening is they're going back 2 years to make this presentation necessary this morning. It was the RFP, it was emergency. The piece on the right is that it was over budget. And so you had to make an exception and put, I think it was another $113,000 into your budget. Okay, next slide. And you've practically doubled the accounting staff in that RFP. 9 outstanding accountants up there from Lauterbach and Amen. And again, my point is they came here for a certain purpose, and instead it's an example of pathological excoriation, picking at old matters. Next slide. Everything that the Treasury gets is given to accounting after we do a reconciliation to the penny. I believe that Treasury by statute collects and manages money. We share the documentation with accounting and the board and the public 100%. And then accounting's job is to do the bookkeeping, including bank recs and journal entries. The US Bank, PFMAM, and Vectors Research have given us the next slide, these quotes, where basically, I'm just going to summarize this. I got about 2.5 minutes left. From US Bank, this is the 4th or 5th largest in the country successful at what they do. As a large custodial bank provider and the 4th largest bank in the United States, US Bank provides its clients with monthly audited bank statements, specifically as related to Kane County Treasurer's Office. The county receives a monthly statement and an annual statement for all their accounts. Prior to any statements being delivered, they are fully audited and vetted by our accounting team. Each of our clients use their respective statements to reconcile their books monthly. Same as basically at PFMAM and Vectors Research. The point is, everybody else can do it. What is the reason why we can't do it? Let's see, if you'll go back one slide. It seems like the answer when we get to the end of all these, or the question, I guess, is Kathy Hopkinson says to you, I still have questions. I'm sorry, but I've been in the accounting field for 50 years of my life. When you're being paid nearly $250,000 total compensation, you deliver answers. You don't say, I still have questions. You go out and you answer those questions. Next page. And then the next page. And the next page. Okay. At the end of the letter that I got most recently 2 Fridays ago, it said, wouldn't it be great if we could work together? That's after 2 pages of basically criticisms, calling things errors, mistakes, etc. That's not the way to work together. Next page. There was a serious security breach where an email came out. That had all of the account numbers of all of our banks, investment firms, and the balances. And then let's see. And then the idea of going back 2 years. But that was such a serious thing to have in one place, one sheet of paper, all of our bank account full numbers and the balances. What more does a hacker need than to be given the target? Next page. Then I would say consider the source of the criticism of and not criticism, the false accusations. I believe that it's bitter fruit from a poison tree. Again, the 80-20 rule, just a few bad apples can spoil the barrel. And when someone pulls in a double dip $15,400 from one of our programs out of the county in addition to his salary, I think that that's misconduct. Then last page. So the assets have transferred successfully. The audit is closed. Accounting gets everything we get. And I'd say, please stop the political posturing and let us focus on what we're doing in our office. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Before we. Excuse me, Mr. Tepe.
Yeah.
Please sit down.
Well, Mr. Leonard, we need to really show the kind of performance that is going on here in this obvious political presentation, which you seem to have approved. So, sorry, I just had to applaud this excellent
Mr.
presentation.
Tepe, with respect to my approval, any elected official that wants to do a presentation at any committee meeting has that right to do it. So to say someone approved it or did not approve it is inaccurate.
I was just noting my approval of how great it was.
Well, I would ask that you hold your applause or any other disturbance. It doesn't serve the committee or anyone else. Before we go any further, we have the state's attorney here, Jamie Mosser. I'd like her to have a few minutes to make a few comments.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it. I was asked to come here today to talk about the requests that are being made by the Finance Department. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what the duties of the treasurer are. So the duties of the treasurer are contained in our county code under 55 ILCS 5/3-10005 et al. There's several different statutes within there. It's important to note that Chris Lawson was elected to receive and safely keep the revenues and other public monies of the county and all money and funds authorized by law to be paid to him and to disperse the same pursuant to law. More specifically, under 55 ILCS 5/3-10005.2, the treasurer shall file a monthly report with the county clerk and chairman of the county board summarizing the financial status of his office in such form as shall be determined by the county board. The treasurer has been compliant with that statute. Pursuant to 55 ILCS 5/3-10010, every county treasurer shall keep proper books of account, whether mechanically, electronically, or otherwise produced, used and maintained, and in whatever form such books of account may have by virtue of modern accounting machines and procedures, in which he shall keep a regular, just, and true account of all monies, revenues, and funds received by him, stating particularly the kind of funds received, and this is the statute, not me, whether in gold, silver, county orders, jury certificates, auditor's warrants, or other funds authorized by law to be received as revenue, the time when or whom and on what account each particular sum in money or other funds was received, and also of all monies, revenues, and funds paid out by him agreeably to law, stating particularly the time when, to whom, and on what account payment is made. This section is subject to the provisions of the Local Records Act. The treasurer has been compliant with this portion of the county code. Pursuant to 55 ILCS 5/3-10011, Said books of account shall be free to the inspection of all persons wishing to examine the same. The treasurer has been compliant with this portion of the county code.
Hi, Doc.
Morning, Dale.
How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Well, I
Pursuant to 55 ILCS 5/3-10020, if any county treasurer shall neglect or refuse to render an account or make settlement at any time when required by law, or refuse to answer any question regarding the operation of the county treasurer's office propounded to him by the county board, or refuse to provide the county board with any requested information concerning the accounts maintained by the county treasurer's office, provided the requests are for information that the county treasurer is required by law to maintain and in a format already maintained by the county treasurer, that county treasurer could actually be impeached. Treasurer Lausen has complied with the requests that are made under statute to date and has been in compliance with everything that is provided within his county code. These are the laws that govern what a treasurer can or cannot do. This also governs what this county board can request of the treasurer. Our finance department, not the county board to my knowledge, has requested information regarding accounts from April of 2023 through September of 2023. The treasurer has provided all account details regarding this. The finance department then continued with specific questions regarding these account details. First, I would like to note that these requests are coming from the finance department. If the county board is requesting this information, then it is the county board that should be making these official requests and not using the finance department as a go-between. If it is the finance department, then this board should be asking why they need this particular information from April to September of 2023. Second, the information requested is from a time period when the audit has been completed and closed and no money is noted to have been missing. Why is this relevant information? Why is this information to be requested now in 2025? Why are we having the treasurer and his staff jump through hoops to provide documentation and answers to a situation where there is no suspected missing county funds? This appears to be a waste of the taxpayers' funds and potentially political in nature, rather than ensuring that there are accounting numbers that are correct. Lastly, while members of this board may not agree with how the treasurer runs his office, he is the duly elected treasurer and is complying with all statutes and the county code. This committee should inquire why these actions are being taken by the finance department. I want everyone to note that the treasurer regularly seeks advice from my office to ensure that he is compliant with the law. It is my opinion that he is well within the law, and the requests being made by the finance department do not comply with what the treasurer is statutorily required to turn over, nor is the request in any way timely or relevant at this time. I'm here to answer any questions regarding that, but I wanted to make sure that that was noted as this was requested for my office to review and opine to this county board.
First of all, thank you, Ms. Mosser. At our last finance meeting, I requested that you, the treasurer, and Ms. Hopkinson get together and try to resolve this. From what you've stated here, it sounds to me like things are resolved and there's no further need to discuss this issue. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
Any questions for Ms. Mosser? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Mosser. Thank you, Mr. Lawson, for your presentation. And we'll move on now to the auditor's report. Ms. Wegman?
Good morning. My report is on file and I can answer any questions.
Questions for the auditor? Mr. Gripe?
Morning, Ms. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know the reports are on file, like all departments do that. Thank you for doing that. Is there anything of note that you want this committee or the board to be focusing on or be worried about or be happy about?
Well, no words from the auditor are really happy words, but nothing that's standing out at the moment that I feel that the board should be aware of outside of my numbers that we've produced over the last month.
Thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Wegman? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Wegman. We have a resolution that I need a motion and a second on approving the January 2025 claims paid in the amount of $16,469,850.62.
Sanchez moves.
Sanchez moves. Surges seconds. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, please do the roll on this.
Juby,
Juby, aye.
Lewis,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Happy, yes.
Berman, Leonard.
Leonard, yes. Okay, the resolution passes. Moving on to the finance director's report, Ms. Hopkinson.
Hi, the finance director's report is on file. I will point out one highlighted item under the category of unearned revenue. The county clerk's office has utilized almost $400,000 of their $2 million grant to be applied to fiscal 2024 to cover purchases of election equipment. So we're in the process of reclassing some of that unearned revenue, which has been sitting as a liability, to revenue for fiscal 2024. So I wanted to point that out. And then also just on the bank reconciliations, I have not had a personal discussion with the state's attorney about the bank reconciliation process. I have emailed John Frank. And I do want to explain why we do need to understand when we book journal entries as accountants, you require supporting documentation. When there is no supporting documentation for a journal entry, that's kind of what is called in the accounting world a plug entry. And last year when we were reconciling, we had such a difficult time reconciling. We couldn't understand a lot of the transfers that were made in April of 2023. And we came down to a point where we were close enough and we plugged a difference. And I did contact our audit firm about it. And in the world of auditing, they determined that it was immaterial to the total financial amounts of the county. The county has approximately $400 million in cash spread across many funds, 187 funds, and that it was immaterial. I would say this, just because there is a difference and the audit is complete, does not mean that the difference has now vanished. The difference still exists. We're still in the process of reconciling and making good progress. But we have, as part of our reconciliation process, we've isolated and identified specific differences that are causing us to not be reconciled, for which we do not have supporting documentation. And one of those large differences goes back to April of 2023. And probably about a month ago, when I did receive an email from John Frank and the treasurer that they asked the finance department, me, to submit questions via email and that they would answer questions via email. I have not received answers to those questions. I submitted a memo on February 14th, and I have not received a response yet. And I have said all along that when banks do transfers, there is a great possibility that there is an explanation for the difference. I just want to know what the explanation is. Is it the new bank has a different methodology for calculating their amortization? And so when all of the investments were transferred in April of 2023 from Truist, Raymond James, and Stifel Bank, the county in our general ledger, we track cost and we track market value. We track those two numbers and we have to report those in our audited financial statements. In fact, there's a disclosure in the footnotes where we have to show the difference between cost and market value. And the cost, the carrying cost on the county's general ledger in April was $2 million higher than when the money arrived at US Bank in April. In May and June, US Bank on their bank statements, they called it adjustments, corrections, which got to a difference of about $500,000. So my question, it's just a simple question, wanting to know how is it that the cost changed from the previous banks to the new banks, to the new bank on their books? Was the cost on the old bank statements incorrect? Is the cost on the new bank statements incorrect or correct? Are they using a different amortization policy? Are they not straightlining the amortization? You know, why is there this difference? Because we have to report cost and market value. And when there's a sudden change of $500,000 in cost, you know, what is the supporting documentation that we attach to the journal entry for that? So those have been some of my questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkinson. Any questions for her? Mr. Gripe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, not on the committee, but listening to the treasurer's presentation and Ms. Mosser's presentation and looking at documents, if I'm understanding and remembering correctly, the 2023 audit was closed, signed by Ms. Hopkinson, and is done. And yet I'm hearing that we want to go back, somebody wants to go back to 2023 and dig up something. Apparently the audit firm also said that the difference that they did discover was a de minimis amount. I believe that was the term. And yet now I'm hearing numbers like 500,000, 2 million. Something's not connecting for me, and I am not an accountant, but I'm not understanding what the concern is after the fact when the audit firm, in fact, said, you know, it's de minimis, don't worry about it. Let's move on. The audit was signed by the finance director, and now we're going back. I'm confused.
And I will say this, just because there's a difference of 81,000 doesn't mean that that is a, it could be in the world of bank reconciliations, you could have a $5 million difference and a $5,081,000 difference, two separate transactions that cause a difference of 81, which is why until you get to zero in a bank reconciliation, anything is possible. And again, these differences exist. Those are just a sample of differences. These differences exist and they will carry forward, because a bank reconciliation, you don't wipe off the differences forever. Those differences carry every month until we clear them up. So those differences still exist, even on the December 2023, which is the first month of the fiscal 2024 reconciliation.
Any other question, Mr. Gripe?
Yeah, just one, I guess, going back to Ms. Mosser's very helpful comments. And Mr. Frank, you might be able to comment on this. I think she was suggesting that if there are questions, that this committee and or the board are the ones who are to ask those questions. And so I guess I'm saying it sounds like there's unanswered questions from the finance director's office, and it's here in the room. It's like an 800-pound gorilla, and we're like, let's just not think about it. Let's not do anything about it, and it's not going to go away. So I guess, Mr. Frank, if you could comment on that. Again, I'm not on the committee, but it's just concerning to me that there's this huge unresolved issue in somebody's department at least, and we seem to be ignoring it.
So
And I would also say, and I have to be quite honest, what I don't appreciate is that it kind of sounds like I'm being told to look the other way and not reconcile bank accounts.
So let me provide a little bit of context because I'm not quite. Long story short, the last finance meeting, this whole thing came up. The first thing I did after kind of volunteering that I would try to mediate this between the treasurer and the finance director was I sat down with the finance director and then I immediately went down and sat down with the treasurer, I believe the same day. The gist of the question is largely what Kathy Hopkinson had described, which is what's causing the discrepancy of the 81,000. But there was also a request of making sure that the records that are being received by the treasurer are being forwarded to the finance department. That I believe has been dealt with as of today. Can't speak to what happened in the past. If there was a delay, I don't know. But as it stands right now, my understanding is that the documentation has been provided. The treasurer also gave a full response to that by attaching emails to explain that the banks, he did talk to the banks to make sure there was no other records available. And my understanding is that was in fact the case. So if there are no other records, then the only thing really left at this point would be to call up these banks and basically essentially demand information from them to figure out the difference. There appears to be kind of the disconnect on whether or not we have to reconcile to zero every single year or not. I'm no financial expert. I'm not going to speak to whether that's required. But what my boss is essentially saying is, if we're looking backwards 2 years, then we've gotten to a point where the board needs to make kind of the executive decision here on whether or not they want to make that formal request of the treasurer. The treasurer is obligated to answer such questions, but he is not obligated to answer questions to staff. Now, Ms. Hopkinson is correct. I had made the request of her to put it in writing. That request came from the treasurer. She has put those questions in, and it does seem to be a supplement to her original question. I don't know if the treasurer is intending to respond yet or not. There may be some need for him to get information before he can respond. This is talking about an $81,000 difference from 2 years ago. I don't think the answers need to come the very next day. That said, I think we've gotten to a point truly where the board needs to make a decision. Either they need to put forward this request formally to the treasurer, and the treasurer needs to decide whether or not he is obligated to provide that information, because it does appear the treasurer believes it's gotten to a point where it's now causing possible future issues with the banks where we're essentially questioning their records. And so I think we've gotten from a push to shove situation. So I think the board needs to make a decision on whether or not they want to formally request Ms. Hopkinson's question of the treasurer or not. Now, the treasurer might very well choose to answer Ms. Hopkinson's question on his own. I don't know that. I haven't talked to him specifically about that. That is, by the way, so we're clear, a second set of a question that is a furtherance of the original set of questions, but is nevertheless a second round. The treasurer had chosen to answer those questions the way he did. And now there's basically essentially been a follow-up. So I know that's a very long answer to this, but I think it's very important to understand that the legal on this is the treasurer only has to answer to the board. And if the board wants to make this a formal thing, then the treasurer is then obligated under his authority to answer it. But at this point, it's still up to the treasurer to decide whether or not he wants and how he wants to answer it.
Thank you, Mr. Franks. Any other questions, concerns? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Ms. Hopkinson, for your information today. We will now go into our new business. Our first resolution is approving the 2025 budget adjustment to the Development and Community Services Department for the implementation of a United States National Park Service Historic Revitalization Grant Program in the total amount of $750,000, which would be $250,000 a year for the next 3 years. And there is a $50,000 sweat equity commitment by the Development Department on this grant. would Mr. Van Kirkhoff want to make any comments on that since he's the one involved in this?
Sure, this was presented at Development Committee earlier this month. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I will note that the vast majority of these funds are pass-through grant funds that are going to go to property owners such as the Forest Preserve or private owners of our historic buildings in the more rural parts of Kane County, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, Savannah, please do the roll on that.
Juby,
Shuby, aye.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Yes.
Berman,
Good question. Did we do a motion?
Berman, yes.
We need a motion and a second on this.
Okay,
First of
thank you.
all, so
Sanchez will move that.
second,
Lewis, a second.
Lewis will second. Little innovation.
Now who wants to
I tell
touch this?
ya.
all right, starting over, Juby,
Shuby, aye.
Lewis, Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Steppy, yes again.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes.
Says-
Our second resolution, and that resolution passes, is authorizing an agreement with Tyler Technologies for computer-aided dispatch CAD to CAD custom export interface. This is in the amount of $68,840, and it is grant funded. I need a motion and a second on this.
Lewis, on motion.
Lewis will move.
Sanchez seconds.
Sanchez seconds. Any questions, discussions, comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Juby,
Sorry, Shuby, aye.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Steppy, yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes. This is my last vote.
Leonard. Thank you.
Leonard, yes. Resolution passes. The next item is an ordinance, and what it does is it's repealing section 2, 196A of the Kane County Code and replacing it with a new section 2, 196A. It's related to the depositors for funds for the county treasurer and collector. Every year we do a housekeeping with new depositors that are brought in or taken off. This is the updated version for 2025. I need a motion and a second.
Sanchez seconds.
Any discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none, please do the roll.
Juby,
Shuby, aye.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Steppy, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes. Our next 10 resolutions, which we have to do individually, are all related to procurement cards. The first one is authorizing the number of procurement cards issued to the Office of Emergency Management and each of their transaction limits. I need a motion and a second to discuss and pass.
Lewis,
San-
motions.
Sanchez
Lewis.
seconds.
Moves, Sanchez seconds. Any questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, please do the roll on that.
Juby,
Shuby, aye.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Steppy, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes. Our next one is a resolution acknowledging the review of the number of procurement cards issued to the Kane County Sheriff's Office in each of their transaction limits. I need a motion and a second.
Sanchez moves.
Lewis, seconds.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, please do the roll on that.
Juby,
Shuby, aye.
Lewis,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Steppy, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes. Next resolution acknowledges the annual review of number of procurement cards issued to the coroner's office in each of their transaction limits. I need a motion and a second.
Sanchez moves.
Lewis, seconds.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, please do the roll.
Juby,
Shuby, aye.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Steppy, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes. The next resolution is authorizing the procurement cards issued to the Kane County Judiciary and each of their transaction limits. I need a motion and a second.
Sanchez moves.
Lewis,
Steppy,
seconds.
Sanchez moves, Lewis seconds. Any questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, please do the roll.
Juby,
GBI.
Lewis,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Leonard.
Yes. Next resolution authorizes the number of procurement cards issued to the state's attorney's office in each of their transaction limits. I need a motion and a second on this.
Sanchez. Tepe moves, Sanchez seconds.
Deputy moves, Sanchez seconds. Any questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, please do the roll.
Juby,
GBI.
Lewis,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes. Next resolution authorizes the number of procurement cards issued to the Office of Community Reinvestment and each of their transaction limits. Need a motion and a second.
Sanchez moves.
Lewis seconds.
Just moves, Lewis seconds. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, please do the roll call.
Juby,
Sorry, GBI.
Lewis,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes. Next resolution authorizes 2 procurement cards issued to the Kane County Division of Transportation and the transaction limits thereof. I need a motion and a second.
Sanchez moves.
Lewis seconds.
Sanchez moved, Lewis seconds. Any questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, please do the roll call on that.
Juby,
GBI.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes. Next resolution authorizes the number of procurement cards issued to the Kane County Health Department and each of their transaction limits. I need a motion and a second.
Sanchez moves.
Tepe seconds.
Sanchez moves, Tepe seconds. Any questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, please do the roll call.
Juby,
GBI.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes. Next resolution is the authorization on the number of procurement cards issued to the Kane County Clerk and each of their transaction limits. I need a motion and a second.
Lewis
Tepe
moves.
moves. Tepe seconds.
Lewis moves, Tepe seconds. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, please do the roll.
Juby,
GBI.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes. Our last resolution, and I'm happy for Ms. Juby on this one, because hopefully she won't have to respond after this one, is acknowledging the annual review of number of procurement cards issued to the county board office in each of their transaction limits. I need a motion and a second on this.
Tepe moves.
Sanchez seconds.
Tepe moves, Sanchez seconds. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, please do the roll call.
Juby,
GBI. Thank God. Aye.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Surges, Tepe,
Good job on the resolutions, Mr. Leonard. Yes.
Thank you.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes. We now move on to old business. I don't know of any old business. Mr. Surges does?
Human Services Committee was asked to review the travel policy, and we'll be discussing that at our next meeting. We've had a few meetings ongoing with it now, but I would expect that to advance here to finance after that. And I just wanted to make you aware of that. I do want to make one additional comment, which has very little to do with this committee. Yeah, I did want to make one additional comment, has very little to do with this committee, but I just wanted to, and I'll be mentioning it again at executive. Up at the north end, Jarrett and I are aware there was a tragedy on Monday morning with a community member that involved the sheriff's office, the coroner's office. And, you know, when I got home that night, this was a deeply personal friend to me as well. And when I got home that night and speaking with my family and talking about the prayers that need to go out, somebody made comment to me that remember to pray for the drivers that were involved. And when I made a call to the sheriff's office and the coroner, they both reached out and said, pray for our people because this was a really tough one. And I just want to acknowledge that openly. It's still kind of a fresh wound for me. But we do a whole lot of good here. And I know we battle each other and we talk about finances and silly things and we forget about the families that we impact with the services that we offer. And Monday morning was a pretty big reminder for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Surges. We feel terribly about your loss and the loss and damage injuries to the people in this accident and all the people that helped resolve this issue as well as could be. So thank you very much for your comments. Any other old business, Mr. Gripe?
It's not old business, but just responding to what Cliff was saying. You know, there are some people who object to prayer here, but there's nothing to stop any of us from praying when we're not here or here secretly. So I'd recommend that. And for Leslie and for Dale and for, there's a number of our body that need it. But I'll also remind everybody in this group that one of the resources the Kane County Health Department has is a group called Fox Valley Hands of Hope. I happen to be on the board. That's not why I'm saying it, but it is a free grief counseling service. And it's something I know as a tough guy that I go through stuff like this and I'm saying I don't need help. But anybody in this audience or anybody that's listening or anybody here in the body, it's a great resource. I just had a friend of mine passed last Friday, massive heart attack, and just boom, he's gone. And his wife is going to be using those resources. So I'd highly recommend that for anybody who ever has a loss, a death loss.
Thank you, Mr. Gripe. Those words are well conveyed to all of us. And thank you, Mr. Surges, for your concerns too. Mr. Teppi?
Thank you. I'd like to echo Mr. Gripe's words. The Fox Valley Hands of Hope is an excellent organization. I have a friend of mine is a volunteer there, and I have referred countless people to Fox Valley, as in particular, they've lost a spouse or a loved one. They do an excellent job.
Thank you, Mr. Teppi. You know, this might be something that we would like to put on Kane County Connects so that anybody who looks at Kane County Connects would know of this resource, because I think there are many people that may not know about it. So thank you all for all your comments. Anything else? Seeing none, I need a motion and a second to put the reports on file, place them.
Sanchez asked unanimous consent, place reports on file.
Any objection? Seeing none, the reports are placed on file. The only comment that I would like to make, and I'll make it very brief and very quickly, is the fact that with April 1st upon us in 33 days now, we're going to find out whether or not the sales tax referendum passes or not. What I would like to suggest that we consider doing as soon as possible is considering implementing an attrition program. If perchance the sales tax referendum does not pass, we're going to have some severe cuts that we'll have to make. And I think an attrition program might be a good first step in that resolution. So those are the only comments I have. No need for executive session. And I need a motion and a second to adjourn.
Sanchez moves.
Lewis seconds.
Lewis seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much.